Welcome to Weight Loss and Wellness for Real, the podcast where people like you get the practical solutions and support you need to permanently lose the physical and mental weight so you can feel better and live the life you really want to live in the body and mind you really want to be living in. If you're looking to overcome your stress eating, overeating, binging behaviors, and move to a place of food and body freedom, as well as find more meaning and more moments of joy in life, you are in the right place. Hey everyone, thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. Just a reminder, you can head to my website and sign up for my free newsletter on all things well-being. It comes once a month. It always includes some tips and tricks on health and well-being, and also a high protein recipe along with discount codes for you to use. Also, please, if you are listening to this podcast and find value in what you are listening to, I would really appreciate if you would go to whatever platform you're listening from and subscribe or follow the show. That really helps to get the algorithms going so that other people can find this podcast more easily. And the more people who find it and become subscribers or listeners, so if you're on YouTube, subscribing, all of that helps me keep putting out one episode every single week. I've been doing it now for over 2.5 years, have not missed 1 week. So if you would do that for me, that would be amazing. So today I am talking with DrKathy Campbell, and she is talking about some of the premises in her book called Obesity, the Modern Famine. And she gave a TEDx talk at the University of Tulsa, Oklahoma, called Obesity, the Modern Famine, same name as the book. And it really highlights her innovative approach to community health, combining medical insight with personal health experiences in managing obesity. She is a pharmacist, and a different sort of pharmacist, as she really has or is trying to promote the message of getting people off their medication. So we're going to talk to her about that a little bit, being a pharmacist, how she's doing that, since it seems a little counterintuitive. She offers through her business in, I believe it is Tulsa, Oklahoma, consultations, seminars, and education, really utilizing foundational and integrative health approaches. Her innovative approach to pharmacy includes proactive health practices and really getting some meaningful results for her patients. All right, stay tuned. Keep listening to this wonderful conversation with DrKathy Campbell. All right, so here is DrKathy Campbell. DrKathy, would you maybe just give us a little background on what you do, where you're coming from, and what we're going to maybe touch on a little bit today?
Sure. My name is DrKathy Campbell, and I am a clinical wellness pharmacist. So I've had the profound privilege to be an independent or a pharmacist in one community for 32 years.
That's amazing.
4 generations. And
that is
when
amazing.
you have those kind of deep therapeutic loving relationships, you don't want to get the call from people. Some of these people I've known longer than my mom. And so I don't want to get the call that I've got cancer. And so I really, and I aged with them. So I started at 25. So it became very clear that what I was dispensing was not creating the kind of health that I really wanted for my peeps. And so I started looking deeper into the biochemistry. I have a personal journey that informed that. But I started optimizing all the chemistries that go into people's body. And as a pharmacist trained, there's nobody with better chemical knowledge than a pharmacist. And so I just started factoring in some of the other chemistries, food, stress. Those are powerful chemistries, toxins, and to get the best outcomes for my patients. And I say the rest of my career is helping people not need medications. I'm not against them. I just really don't want you to need them. And so I think that's really where I focus my efforts.
Yeah, I love that. And you have a very unique perspective as a pharmacist, as I kind of got to know some of what you were about and listen. I did listen to your TED Talk, which was great. And I'd recommend anybody to go listen to that. Yeah, it's a very unique perspective. Not one, I don't feel like most pharmacists are thinking in the same way you are. So it's very, and maybe that's a little biased, I don't know, but very refreshing to hear that.
It's accurate. It's an
Okay.
accurate
Okay. Okay.
assessment. It is.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
all have the foundational training, but they all, part of my second or third job is to try to help pharmacists be a little bit
Oh,
more comprehensive in their assessments and their support. Medications only work as an adjunct to diet and exercise. And so
hmm.
I remind them of that and gently kind of tease out their profound knowledge and understanding
Yeah.
into this other direction.
Yeah. I love that. So you are doing some education then in that regard as well with other
Yeah.
pharmacists.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah.
yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to first ask you about, I had heard you talk about a couple times, sort of the interplay between our primitive bodies and our modern culture. And I had just interviewed another person who was sort of talking about this. He called it the evolutionary gap. But, could you speak on that a little bit and just kind of how do we start to put the foundations of our own health into that place where we are kind of stuck between this gap, if you will?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it really is the foundation of creating a culture of health, really. But
Yeah.
first, you have to identify the gaps. And so it just occurred to me
Mm.
that as I've coached people, most of the challenges they're dealing with are not personal challenges to be overcome necessarily by them. Um, I mean, it's not like they created the world they're in that's toxic,
Right,
right?
right, right.
Um, and as I coach it, I actually had an insight. I was
Mm.
listening to a Olympics about a decade ago, and the Olympian, it was a commercial, and the Olympian said one thing that sparked my brain. He said, "I haven't had dessert in 3 years." And
Oh
I
boy.
thought, wow, what would the life of an Olympian look like? Right.
Mm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
really started me thinking, they carefully craft everything in their life, from where they sleep, what they eat, the air they breathe, such that their body responds in a specific way and the
Mm-hmm.
outcome of a gold medal occurs, right? So I
Right,
thought,
right.
well, that's interesting. And then I started assessing my own. Well, what's my health gold medal? How do I,
Mm-hmm.
if I want to twerk at my granddaughter's wedding, then what are the conditions in my life that will support my body in doing that? And
Right.
when I coach people, if they have to wrestle the world, they're going to lose. Humans
Yeah.
we're not that strong. Our primitive
Right.
brains are like squirrels. But if we
Yeah.
can create a structure around us, a medium, a culture like a petri dish that we get to live
Mm-hmm.
in, that creates health, there's
Right.
longevity, the health will emerge and it will persist. So that
Right.
whole idea of, when I coach people, I'm like, listen, you come to me really mad and frustrated and shamed, and I want you to get really clear that most of the things that are contributing to your body's survival in this manner are being imposed on you. If you want to get mad, which I think we should, get mad out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can use
Yeah.
that energy to do things like crafting your own culture and cooking again and shopping differently and getting help.
Mm.
That's where we need to put the mad, not internal, but let's create a different world for you to live in.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
everybody's different. Everybody's different, have different cultural challenges. I'm telling you, the hardest I've ever seen was a long haul trucker. That's
Mm.
a
Yeah.
that's a very
That's quite a
challenging life.
lifestyle. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. But a mom of three toddlers has its own bucket of challenges
Absolutely.
too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we kind of tease that culture and environment out. And my big goal is for all of us to create a new culture that produces health for our grandbabies, right? It's
Hmm.
too hard to be well right now. And being well is not taking 15 medicines. It's really closer to not needing 15 medicines. So I think as a culture and as a body of leaders, we've got to start leading our own lives that way, and then our communities that
Yeah.
way. And then hopefully we can actually get a different result.
Yeah. Do you see that more as a function of education then? I mean, kind of the message that you're putting out there, like, do you see that as sort of the starting ground, or do you get really practical with people and like, you get to know them as clients. And so then it's like, this is how you're creating the culture around you. This is what you need to do.
Yeah, I think it's a little both. Education is always part. I help my patients. I empower, embrace the journey, educate, empathize, and really, go on that journey. So education is definitely part of it. I always tell people what I know doesn't matter. It's really what the individual discovers about their unique situation that where the gold lies, and that's where it goes. And I get very tactical, we get very tactical. And in the book, I have a lot of tactics in the book because it's simple, but it ain't easy, right?
Yes, exactly.
And it's complex. It's a complex problem, and every one of us are unique. Medicine can't and won't and doesn't want to deal with that individuality. So we have to empower the individual, and we've got to create a team. Each person needs to have a health team. And if you're putting any chemistry in your body, you need a pharmacist, period.
Right.
The expert. And that's kind of been systematically stripped from people's health and wellness team. So I'm all about getting that in there. But if you don't have a good hairdresser, you're missing out too. So
this is true.
That's important.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah. So what I hear you saying is, maybe one of the first things is thinking about how to create that own team around yourself. So really too, you're talking a lot more, is community the word for it, but where we're not so self-sufficient in trying to do this. And then by building that community around us, we're hopefully then going to shift the culture. Do you have hope for a shift in this?
I do.
Okay.
I'm not at all blinded by the challenge, right?
Yeah.
But I think hope is the direction, and it's the goal, and it keeps things persistent, which when you are trying to make a difference, the key is that persistence, is just persisting in the face of the obstacles. You persist in the conversation, you persist in the commitment, you persist in the love and connection. And eventually, I think that's how change happens.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not easy. I don't think easy is ever the thing, but part of being a perimenopausal 57-year-old woman is you get that you don't need easy. You just need to do it.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Just do it. So I've heard
just
you, I'm going to shift just a little bit. I've heard you mention, I loved this. I heard this in, maybe I was listening to, it must have been a podcast episode that you were on that I was listening to. But it's not the calorie, it's the chemistry. So could you talk a little bit about on that? Because I hadn't heard it put in that way before. And I thought it was really interesting how you described that.
Thank you. And really, the calorie conversation is probably one of the most deadly conversation that has persisted.
Yes.
Just simplistically, 100-calorie donut and 100-calorie chicken breast are completely different chemistries for the body's function.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I often tell my patients we're a bag of chemistry with a dose of God, right? And the
I like that.
And I think God is in there, the quantum level. I don't know.
Right.
Energy,
Whatever. Yeah.
Whatever that looks like. That's sunlight and all this. I don't know. But the chemistry has to be right. It has to be right. And the sickest people I see in my pharmacy, in some ways, the ones that scare me the most, are middle-aged, normal weight women who have starved themselves for decades. And they're completely low in muscle. They're completely sarcopenic. Their bones have been leached their whole life, and they're osteoporotic, and they're just a decade away from dementia or these other metabolic dysfunctions. It's because we've had a society that has not supported what we really need for foundational health and function. And I see health as function. Can you function well enough to live the life you want?
Right. Right.
And that's health.
Yeah.
So it is the chemistry. And as a pharmacist, that's the lens I was kind of trained to see things through, but I've extrapolated into food chemistries, stress chemistries, toxins, microbiome. I kind of just live and think and dream sometimes in that realm.
That's great. So kind of, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what you're saying is a lot of our health has to do with, like, can we sort of get the chemistry? Okay, so hold on. So can we get the chemistry right first? And I'm thinking, because I'm more, the behavioral side of things. I'm a mental health therapist. And so I'm always thinking about how, like the how, right? How do I get people to change and sustain that change? And so is kind of what you're saying is if we can get the chemistry right, maybe some of that would be easier to do?
Absolutely. So I actually work very closely with several therapists, and what they've figured out, and that they can't do their part without the foundationals being in place. I say this, we don't have a mental health issue in the United States. We have a physical health issue that's manifesting in the brain. The brain is an organ, and it is having incredibly challenging time because we don't have the fundamentals to support organ function in the brain. And it's manifesting in these behaviors. And they're often, I think, survival behaviors. Anxiety, nothing causes anxiety like low oxygen and low blood sugar, period. Reactive hypoglycemia looks like defiance, or it looks like anger. But it's all that biochemistry and the body surviving the presence or the absence of the chemistry.
Yeah, really good point. And I'm even thinking about, what we eat. I mean, in general, we could just say what we eat. We all know our mood is affected by what we eat. We've all had situations where I'm sure we can relate to that. So yeah, very, very interesting. What about, the one we always hear, the move more, eat less, that whole diet culture sort of thing. And by the way, I should say, I know your focus on weight loss or health, or like, do you, when you're working with clients, is that kind of, where do you go with that?
No, it's metabolic function. It's not weight loss, but society can't hear optimizing metabolic function yet. So I had to brand and market the byproduct of getting that right is a better weight, because to me, and like I say in the book, obesity is a symptom. It's not the problem. Now, it is problematic, but it's not the problem. It is very symptomatic. So my thought process with anybody is, how do I optimize their metabolic function? So I look at the drugs, I look at the nutrients, I look at their diet, I look at their life. I help them do that. And the byproduct of getting that function well is better health. I mean, incredibly better health and sustainable health, because we're going back to what I call the foundations, right? So, I mean, it is, I start there in my mind, and then we journey where the big things seem to show up. So when you look at metabolic function or metabolic pathways, you got to have the nuts and bolts and tires on that assembly line for the car to be made, which the big car that I focus on is ATP, which is energy.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Okay.
So if we don't have enough nuts and bolts and tires on that assembly line, instead of taking $1 of glucose and turning it through that assembly line and making $38 of energy, we may only make $10 of energy.
Right.
Well, that is an oh no for the brain. What are we going to do? Let's make her tired. Let's make her irritable so nobody wants to ask anything of her. So so eating less doesn't fill the tire. It doesn't fill the assembly line. Exercising more creates more demand with a low supply. So it's a very short-term strategy, and it's also hasn't worked.
Yeah,
look at our society, and the biggest people are the best dieters. If you've lived with weight, and And I have lived with weight my whole life. I was 100 pounds at 5 years old in 1973, 350-pound grandpa in the Great Depression. I've been studying that. And then with the science degrees, I'm like looking at the mechanisms and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Eating less and exercising more has made it worse. The reality is you got to eat a heck of a lot of the right stuff.
Yeah.
A heck of a lot of the right stuff. And our culture does not provide it.
So it's this message of, when we talk about, okay, you need to eat less, you need to move more. It is very much this restriction, this lessening. And, what I hear you saying is this has to be more about getting the right foods actually in order to get that metabolism moving in the right direction.
Exactly. And it's a lot. I mean, my patients, I'm always asking them, what did I say that worked? And they say, you just kept telling us to eat more. We thought you were crazy, but we did it and it just kept working. And we felt better. And what I'm finding is I have people 7 to 8 years out still at or below where they were. So we've taught them the foundations of how to navigate.
Yes,
and
that is sustainable.
You have to populate the chemistry. And we haven't done that. It started changing with agriculture, really, from hunting and gathering to agriculture. And then really where it's become catastrophic is since the 80s, I think.
I would agree.
And it was the kids' meal and the Chrysler minivan. Because all of a sudden, we could drive and eat. That was the first vehicle designed to eat in. And the kids' meal changed foundationally what humans were trained to eat.
Yeah.
And now those 80 babies are adults wanting bigger portions of kids' meals, chicken, burgers, pizza. The generation before never had a kids' meal. They had what the parents ate in smaller portions. It was at minimum a vegetable protein and a starch. So that was the training.
Right.
And now not only are kids marketed to and trained to eat that, the schools are providing that. And
I know.
And we're profoundly deficient. Deficient.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions, just because you just mentioned kids, because that's one after my heart, I just have a heart for that. I mean, we make the decisions for our kids when it comes to food, we are the ones educating and teaching them. Do you work with people at all do you do anything with parents in regards to helping them figure out ways, I guess, better health for their kids?
I try. I several. One of the things my target are mamas, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I want to help mamas is, one, nobody's helping them, but two, they are such an influencer in their sphere.
Yeah.
And I've had many children, husbands, collateral around mom doing the program, where the entire network started looking and impacting. And so that's my non-maniacal plan, is to really support mamas so that they can support and create a culture that will produce health, because I think that's what they want. And I think there's power there, and I think there's change there. It's not easy all the time, but I think that is, if we can support them in that. It's a crisis level right now for not only children, but conception.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
I have a real heart, and that's one of the things I'm looking at is preconception, because mamas and daddies are having trouble reproducing. And then the babies are going early term and creating real challenges for much of their life. And we know foundational chemistry is part of it. We absolutely know that. So that's a little aside in my practice that I like that. I'd like to, there's nothing better than helping a mama have a healthy baby.
I know. So true.
Nothing
so
better.
True.
Nothing better.
So true. Do you, any maybe practical advice on how would one kind of start to recognize maybe like external influencers or factors that they could kind of start looking at in regards to someone who wants to just start bettering their health? who wants their
Sure.
metabolism to get a little bit better?
Well, I would say the best thing to start with is 7 to 10 cups of vegetables or servings of vegetables a day. Okay.
Okay.
So to get there, first you have to audit your life a little bit and say,
Mm,
okay, I've had 2 in the last 10 days, right? So then you
yeah.
just go from there. And then you start saying, all right, how do I get them to show up? I mean, that's
Yes.
the thing. People bring me donuts. They don't bring me broccoli.
Right.
So, and
Right.
you go into the break room at work, there's no cuties or apples or there's none of that there. So when you
Yeah.
start auditing your life, you start auditing, well, how do I get that stuff to even be an option? And
Right.
then you start just increasing that, right? So basically, Whole Foods, everybody thinks there's about 150, 188 vitamins.
Mm-hmm.
But they have identified 26,000 plus chemicals in Whole Foods.
Mm. Wow.
So we have to get the food is right. We've got to give the body that smorgasbord of selection that we get with Whole Foods. So getting that 7 to 10 servings of vegetables in is a great first step. Okay.
Yeah. Just getting it
Um,
added in.
yeah, just get it to
Mm-hmm.
show up. And
Yeah.
and the thing is, when you start eating that, you start correcting the metabolism almost immediately. Your
Mm.
microbiome, your gut changes, the fiber changes, you start detoxing chemicals because of the fiber. And just that starts this process. You start seeing insulin come down. You start seeing hunger start shifting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so first it's the plant and then it's the
Mm-hmm.
protein. We need to make sure
Okay.
we have that good bolus of protein. And then we put them in and we see how the body processes. So many
Mm-hmm.
people, if you eat a great diet, take great supplements, but your gut doesn't work,
Right.
you didn't
Then
eat
you're not
it.
absorbing anyway.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So getting the environment to have these positive chemicals show up in the form of food is the first step, I would say. The second step is getting help and assessing, is it working? Am I working? Is it getting better? And then we go from there. And in the book, how I structured the book, so it's Obesity, the Modern Famine. There's
Mm-hmm.
about 24 famines that I've
Oh, okay.
identified that we're missing, the presence of which might make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of each chapter, there's a health strategy, and then there's a
Mm-hmm.
practice. And they're little
Love it.
things. And there's a lot of them. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying go
Yeah.
do them all, but
Right.
master one or two and then go on to the next.
Yeah. Do you ever find, this is maybe more on a practical level, but by introducing vegetables first and then trying to get the protein in, do you find that hard for clients then to get the protein in because they're eating all the veggies first? Like, have you found that to be a challenge at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
challenge for
So you're,
me.
yeah.
It's a challenge every day. And I tell people, I said, every day, the rest of my life is about that as far
Yeah.
as a health
Yeah.
strategy. I'm going to
Right.
fail many days, but I'm going to
Yeah.
try every day,
Yeah. I
you
love
know,
that.
and I'm
Yeah.
going to do the best in the moment, in the situation. So if I'm going through the drive-through or I'm with somebody, I'm going to look, what's the best thing in this moment? And
Yeah.
I had a patient who I've known for 30 years. She did the program and she checks in about once a year and she goes, okay, Kath, what do I need to be thinking about food? And I said, where do I get what I need?
Hmm. Yeah.
Where do I get
Where
what
do
I
I get
need?
what I need?
So
Right.
when I open that menu, where do I get what I need? Is there any of that on here? Right.
Right.
And it's not that I don't indulge. No, I just know for me, I need what I need. And I got to try to
Yeah.
find that consistently.
Yes, yeah. Well, I love and I do this too. I have the same philosophy with clients. It's like I want to add, I don't want to take anything away from them ever,
Mm-hmm.
really.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can coach them into adding things in, that really does seem to start to eliminate a lot of the other, and I'm assuming we're aligned where a lot of the other is like the processed food, that's
Yeah.
always kind of the goal. Like, how do we get that out? But it's like being able to add things in that way and give a structure to it can be so helpful then, because that other stuff can fall away a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah,
Appetite's a little
and
more regulated.
and it
Mood.
really shifts, I think, the brain's wanting it. When
Yeah.
our primitive ancestors had a bad day and were stressed, were being run by a lion, and their cortisol went up, and their brain
Mm-hmm.
said, "Go eat." They
Mm-hmm.
grabbed the leaf because that's what was around them. They grabbed the leaf. They ate what they ate because that primitive drive and what was around them, their environment, really actually supported that stress reaction and their surviving and the resilience. Today,
Mm-hmm.
that same primitive drive, we grab what shows up, and what shows up 9 times out of 10 is toxic,
Yeah.
toxic
Yeah.
waste. Now, it tastes
Yeah.
good. Somebody makes a lot of money off it, but ultimately is driving the chronic suffering and conditions that we're seeing today.
Yeah.
So the environment in that case is what I think is the thing that we have to really be aware of, educate, and
Yeah.
then proactively manage as we can.
Yeah, for sure. Do you, little controversial question. What do you say? There's a lot of, I mean, in the nutrition space, there's just so much overwhelming information.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to people? There's a lot of talk out there about vegetables and anti-nutrients in the vegetables. There's a lot of people going carnivore, all that kind of stuff. Any thoughts on any of that?
Plants survive as well, right? Survival of the fittest. So you have a blackberry bush that's going to fight back, right? And a lot of these anti-nutrients, I don't get too wrapped up in, because I think we're so far away from that little issue causing the chaos. I'm like, don't get messed up there. I have had people that we determined that there was a nuance with oxalate, or there was a nuance
Yeah,
here,
sure.
but it's fairly rare, and you won't
Yeah,
even find that unless you're actually consuming enough of the ballpark right stuff, right? So I'm like, yeah, I mean, somebody's making a lot of money off of that concept, but it's also having people think that a donut is healthy and the plant is
exactly.
not. And I'm like, that is just crazy. And
Yeah,
I think it's harmful in the big conversation. And that's also why you have a health team to help you figure you out.
exactly. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
because you do. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to
Okay.
say, because I think I have heard you say you are kind of down that road of it's pretty individual, and it really is figuring out what's best for you and your biochemistry. I mean, it sounds like in general, there's maybe a core diet that
Yes.
a person could start following, and then the nuance kind of comes from there.
I can't get away from the fact that we need plant and protein to operate our machine, period.
Got it.
Now,
Yeah.
some genetics might steer more towards a protein. If you're an Inuit Indian and have that, you've kind of tweaked out based on that environment. Some are really good at storing fat very easily.
Mm-hmm.
That would be me. And
The
it's probably,
survivors.
yeah, thrifty genes, right? And it
Yes.
turns out
Yes.
I have a low iron absorption gene. And
Oh,
so when you have
yeah.
low iron, eating low fat, no red meat was probably not the best thing. So
Right.
there
Right.
is this nuance of, is it working? We don't have the
Yeah.
technology to take a drop of blood and say, this is you. And I
Right.
don't know that we're going to have that, because if you put that same genetics in a cold environment, you're going to have a different expression. If you have a different stress environment, you're going to have a different expression. So I teach people to
It's a
journey.
great point.
I
Great
teach
point.
people to journey, and everybody's different, and they're their expert in their bag of bones. So as a clinician, I'm there to support, educate, and help figure this out for people.
Yeah.
And with the internet, they have way more information than most health practitioners have ever had, and
So
they know their
true.
body. But
Yeah.
it's overwhelming for them, so they just need a partner in health. They need somebody to partner with so that they can be well.
Yep, I agree. Back to your book, Obesity, the Modern
Mm-hmm.
Famine. You mentioned a little bit ago that you have quite a few famines listed in there. So
Mm-hmm.
so besides the food, Can you just name a couple others that you kind of dive into in the book?
Sure. So there's several famines. I'm going to start with, there's 5 fundamental chemistries we need to work well. I've got it broken down. And each one of these could be a complete dissertation in life study, right? So
I'm
it's
sure.
nutrition and nutrients, the chemistry of nutrition, oxygen, sunlight, water, connection.
Oh, I love this.
Okay. Those are foundational biology, foundational chemistry. And as a mental health practitioner, that connection one is a complete career. It's a huge piece of it, which our society has decimated. We do not have a connected society, and people are sick because of it. So in my famines, there's famine of water, famine of oxygen, famine of sunlight, famine of hot and cold, famine of chemistry. Then I move on, and there's famine of fiber, famine of flavor. Go on to famine of connection, famine of love and touch, famine of safety, famine of purpose.
Huge one.
Yeah, so I tweaked them out, and it sounds like a lot. It's not a huge book. It's about 220 pages.
Perfect.
And it's what people are telling me, and my goal was for it to be very easily consumed. It's an easy read.
Love it.
I've been coaching patients for 32 years, and what people don't realize is pharmacists can take very complex science and make it very simple and very consumable, because that's how I get people well. I get them to understand. So that's I think it came through in the book, is what I'm hearing. It's came through in the book.
Yes. Yeah, that is great. I can't wait to read it. It sounds incredibly interesting. Would you mind speaking just for a minute on the sunlight one and just how we need that for our chemistry and what that does for us?
Sure. So remember I said a dose of chemistry with a dose of God, a bag of chemistry with a dose of God.
Yes.
Sunlight actually is the electromagnetic energy that has persisted for life, for as long as life has existed. And I kind of think we're just a plant with emotions. So if you think about photosynthesis, that whole process is driven by sunlight. And it's kind of obtuse for us, for medicine, I think, to just poo-poo any connection to that. They often will just look at sunlight impacting vitamin D, and that is one thing that happens that is foundational for the chemistry, is the energy of sunlight will cause your body to produce a critical hormone that we call vitamin D. That's just one way, though. It's not just a deep issue. It's the energy actually hitting those assembly lines and driving some of the process. So it's no accident when we went inside, things started changing. But humans were evolved and designed to get safe amounts of the energy from the sun.
Oh, I just adore that. I'm a total outside junkie, and I just preach it all the time. So I really appreciate that explanation and just how important it is to our bodies. So
Good.
Well, Kathy, I want to respect your time here a little bit. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about or that we didn't cover or mention?
I will say one other thing. 7 out of 10 Americans are on a pharmaceutical drug. Those are designed to alter metabolic function. And nobody's helping people, potentially not need them, but once they take them, there are designed impacts, good and bad, that need to be accounted for. Many of them cause drug-induced nutrient deficiencies. And it is a critical thing to assess and support that. The current medical system won't. They don't have time. They're not empowered to do that. They don't have the knowledge. Your pharmacist can, depending on where they function out of and how they function. if you're forced to mail order, if you're forced to a chain, they have stolen that away. So you're going to have to find a clinician to help you with. And that's one of the things that I am working on, is creating a network of partners in health to be able to not only directly support patients, but actually collaborate with like-minded professionals to do the same. So those medications are not benign. They're not just the good thing that the doctor wants it to have happen. The reality is, for many of them, the long-term impact is way more severe than the short-term benefit, but nobody's really saying that. And we can moderate the long-term impact. So I want to put that out in their consciousness, because so many people are being raised on pharmaceuticals and are dependent on pharmaceuticals. If we're going to use them, and like I said, I'm not anti-pharmaceuticals, there's just a whole nother level that we need to support patients in.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that message. I think it is a message that is not being told. It's very true. So I appreciate you sharing that very much. Yeah. And I appreciate you. You are doing the good work out there. Like I said at the beginning, it's been so fun getting to know your work. And I look forward to reading your book. And I appreciate that you are the pharmacist trying to get people off drugs, which is it's just so great. So yeah, appreciate your time. And where can people find you? Where can they get the book? Where can they follow you?
So my website is probably the best way to reach out. It's DrKathySays.com, DrKathySays.com. If you're in
I'll put it in the show notes.
Oh, perfect. If you're ever in Tulsa, just north of Tulsa is Owasso, Oklahoma, and I'm at 76th and Main is my pharmacy. We're actually having a book signing party today. I've got recipes.
Awesome.
I help people learn to cook, and I do cooking demos and all this other stuff. So we're going to have a fun day today.
Awesome.
And I'm speaking throughout. The book can be found at Amazon. It can, or contact me and I'll get you one. So it sounds great.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much again. Appreciate your time.
Heather, it's been a privilege. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Guess what? I have a lovely discount code just for you, my listeners. The code is 10 off. That's 10OFF. And it will get you 10% off any one of my online courses, which now include Mastering Mindful Eating, Overcome Binge Eating, Overeating, and Emotional Eating for Good. And I also have a course on When You Want to Stop the Weight Loss Medication, a comprehensive guide to weight maintenance and mastery. So if you've maybe lost some weight using a medication and you're now wanting to go off the medication but keep the weight off, this is the course for you. And any course you buy, you keep the course for a minimum of 3 years, maybe longer. It just depends on how many are purchased. All courses are self-paced, and I promise you they are practical, meaning they don't just tell you what you need to do. You actually engage in the skills and strategies needed to make actual lasting behavior change. You learn how to do the what. Okay, all courses have multiple modules with multiple lessons. All include lots of examples, tips, and tricks to make things simple and clear. And you also get lots of downloadable resources, including the daily planning template that I use with my own clients, the exact protocol to use after a binge or an overeat has occurred to minimize its damage on your body and your mind. There are protein cheat sheets, research-based journaling prompts, and the literal how-to checklists on the skill you are learning about. And with the weight maintenance course, you also have a movement module that will help you figure out how to make a movement plan that fits your particular lifestyle and level of fitness. And you also have a natural appetite regulation module. So whether if you have never tried an online course to change behavior, or if you have, I just highly would recommend that you try one of these. I've put my heart and soul into both of them. They are all research-based, and now you can get 10% off. So again, that code is 10OFF. If you're ready to make changes that last, you can go to my website, heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And from the main menu, click courses, and it will get you to where you want to go. Or you can click on the links in the episode description below the show. And again, as soon as you're there, when you're ready for checkout, just enter the code 10OFF, 10 off. And just a reminder, I also have an ebook cookbook that is now available. It's called Protein Forward Easy Recipes. It includes all high protein recipes, including breakfast and sweet treats full of protein and lunches and dinner. Okay, so again, head to my website. It's probably the easiest thing to do, heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And from there, go to courses or the cookbook. And again, use code 10 off at checkout. Did you know you can find a lot more help from me on my website? Go to heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And there you will find links to my online courses, how I work with clients one-on-one, as well as online with my coaching and counseling services that I offer. The information in this podcast is intended to provide a broad understanding and knowledge of healthcare topics. This information is for educational purposes only and should not be considered complete and should not be used in place of advice from your physician or healthcare provider. We recommend you consult your physician or healthcare professional before beginning or altering your personal exercise, diet, or supplementation program.